Hi, and welcome to the third and final installment of our series on the wonderful world of string instruments. My name is Charles, and I'm the conductor of the Oakville Chamber Orchestra. Before continuing, make sure you've watched our first two videos, which are linked in the description below. So now, if you're all caught up, let's welcome back our OCO String Quintet. In our first two videos, we learned many of the basics of string instruments and how they're played. We learned about how a string orchestra is formed, what makes each of its instruments unique, and some of the essential ways that string players create different kinds of sound. We even learned a little bit about the history of string playing in the European classical tradition. In today's third and final video, we'll be looking at, and listening to, some of the different ways that string players create highly unique and interesting tone colors through the use of special effects and how they apply the use of dynamics to add shading and texture. Are you ready? Then let's welcome back some of our friends from the quintet who we met last time. Let's meet our bass player, David, who's going to tell us about a cool technique called Kaleno.
Hi, Charles. Well, if you'll remember from last time, most of the techniques we shared with you use the hair of the bow to create sound. Kaleno is an unusual technique. Its name is Italian and means with the wood. When we play Kaleno, we turn the bow on its side or upside down, and instead of playing with the hair, we actually bounce the wood of the stick on the strings.
What an interesting sound. Do string players often have to play Kaleno?
Not really. Kaleno is considered a special effect. When a whole section of the orchestra, say 25 violins, all play it together, it can sound like all sorts of things. The sound of rain, or even the rattling bones of a dancing skeleton. Kaleno adds more of a percussive sound than playing with the hair, which is to say it is more drum-like. I found that composers tend to use Kaleno to create a special tone color meant to surprise the audience.
Let's welcome back our cellist, Beata. Hi, Beata.
Hi, Charles.
I understand you're going to tell us about something called sol ponticello, which makes sense because you play the cello. What does it have to do with the cello?
Well, actually nothing. Ponticello means little bridge, and all the orchestral string instruments can play it. It just means to place the bow very close to this wooden piece holding up the strings called the bridge. When we place the bow normally, we get a full, rich sound like this. But when we place the bow close to the bridge, the sound that is created seems a bit scratchy and nasal sounding, something like this.
Wow, that's sort of scary sounding. When do string players usually use ponticello?
It is a special effect often used to portray cold, icy wind, or sometimes to make a very thin, creepy sounding tone color.
Hey everyone, let's check in again with our viola player, Daniela, who's here to teach us all about glissandos. Hi Daniela.
Hi there. A glissando is one of the most fun special effects to play on a stringed instrument. Usually string players use all their fingers in the left hand to play different notes. If you wanted to play a scale going up, you'd use all of them, like this. But glissando means to slide, usually using only a single finger, like this.
Hey, that sounds like the siren of a fire engine or something.
Yes, it might. Playing with glissandos can make music sound very different. It is one of the more common special effects, and it's lots of fun to play. Usually one of the first silly sounds that new players figure out. And to be honest with you, the novelty never really wears off.
Hi Al. Okay, you've got harmonics. Tell us all about them.
Okay, harmonics can be kind of challenging to explain, so I'll give you the simple version. Usually when we play our stringed instruments, we press our fingers on our left hand down firmly onto the strings, like this. By using strong left-hand fingers, we stop the string fully from vibrating behind our fingers, and all the rest of the length of the string is shortened, playing a higher note.
Right, that makes sense. Smaller instruments tend to play higher notes. We learned that in the first video. So, of course, a shorter string would also play higher notes. So, then what makes harmonics different?
Well, when playing harmonics, we don't actually press our fingers all the way down, we just rest them lightly on the strings. This technique simplifies the way in which the string vibrates, and by cutting out certain parts of its vibration, something we call overtones, we can change both the pitch and the tone color.
I noticed it almost sounds like a flute.
Yes, in fact, oftentimes composers indicate harmonics when they want to create a light, flute-like sound. There is also a technique called artificial harmonics, where we stop the string with one finger and play a harmonic with another finger above it on the same string, sounding something like this.
Great. Okay, did you catch all that? Kaleno is when string players hit the strings with the wood of the stick. Sul ponticello indicates that players should place the bow right close to the bridge, which sounds scratchy and cold. Glissando means to slide and bend the pitch up or down with one finger. And harmonics are a way of producing a light, flute-like tone by resting the fingers gently on the strings instead of pressing all the way down. Listen to the quintet play 3 short excerpts using 3 of the 4 techniques we just learned. After each one, see if you can identify which of the techniques they used. Okay, so what did you all think? Did they use Kaleno? Was it Ponticello? Maybe Glissando? Or was it harmonics? That's right, it was Sul Ponticello. Did you notice how the use of Ponticello created an icy, shivering sound? That was from a piece called Winter by Antonio Vivaldi, so it makes sense that string players often play the opening Sul Ponticello. Okay, time for round 2. There are 3 techniques left. Which one will they use now? Kaleno, Glissando, or harmonics? All right, what were you thinking? Was it Kaleno? Glissando? or harmonics? Well, if you said Kaleno, then you got it right. In this excerpt, the second violin and viola both hit the strings with the wood of the bow. This piece is called Night on the Bald Mountain by Modest Mussorgsky. In it, Mussorgsky uses Kaleno to add an unexpected and slightly unsettling tone color in what is a pretty creepy sounding piece. Okay, there are 2 techniques left and only one more excerpt. Which technique will the quintet showcase now? Glissando or harmonics? Okay, this one's a bit tricky. Which technique did they use? Was it glissando? Or was it harmonics? Well, if you said glissando, then you might want to reconsider, because it was actually harmonics. In this excerpt, our 2 violinists used harmonics to play the very, very high notes. This piece is from Camille Saint-Saëns' Carnival of the Animals, and is meant to depict the comical hee-hawing, braying of donkeys. Okay, great job remembering Kaleno, which is hit with the wood, Ponticello, which is played close to the bridge, Glissando, which is sliding on one finger, and harmonics, which is creating a high flute-like sound by resting the fingers lightly on the strings. Special techniques like these are some of the ways that composers and string players can add unique effects to their music, which helps to add interest for the audience. Another way that musicians can achieve this is through the use of something called dynamics. Most of the ideas we've been talking about throughout this series of videos have been related to the element of music called tone color, also known as timbre. We've talked a lot about how string players change the quality of sound that they produce, the tone color, either by using different bow techniques like détaché or legato, or by creating unique effects by plucking the strings, or even hitting them with the wood of the bow. Well, dynamics are another way that string players can add creative shading, interest, and even surprise to their music. Simply put, dynamics affect the volume of the sound, like when you turn up the volume knob on the radio in a car, or when you drag the volume slider higher on a computer screen. Pianissimo, indicated with 2 P's, is one of the quietest indications that string players can play. One step up from pianissimo is piano, which means quiet, and it's indicated with only 1 P. I know that's a bit confusing because we know that the piano is also a musical instrument, but this name for the instrument, the full name is actually pianoforte. So really the name for the instrument is translated from Italian, means soft loud, which is what the piano can do. It can play soft and it can play loud. Next higher is mezzopiano, which means moderately quiet. Then mezzoforte, moderately strong, forte, which is strong, and finally fortissimo, which uses 2 F's in the same way that pianissimo uses 2 P's. You can think of this scale as a sort of an old-fashioned thermometer. As we move up the dynamics thermometer, the volume gets louder, and as we move down, it gets quieter. There are lots of other dynamic indications, like crescendo, which means to get gradually louder, and diminuendo, which means to get gradually quieter. And also, there is no limit to the number of P's a composer might want to create really, really quiet music. Likewise, a composer could use as many F's as they want to make really, really loud music. Maybe by now you have a different sense of just how versatile string instruments and their musicians are. Between all the different techniques they can use, including dynamics, there is no limit to the expressiveness that can be achieved. Hey, I had a great time sharing all of this with you throughout these videos. And on behalf of Oakville Chamber Orchestra and the quintet, I'd like to thank you for your close attention and enthusiasm throughout. Before we say goodbye, we're going to play one final game. The quintet is going to play a little farewell song, and I've got a challenge for you. Do you think you can do it? This last piece makes extensive use of different dynamics. It moves from really quiet, pianissimo, all the way to very loud, fortissimo, and sometimes it can be really surprising. See if you can act out the dynamics. How could you represent fortissimo? Can you make yourself as big as you can? Or what about pianissimo? How would you make yourself as small as possible? Clear a bit of space around you and try to act out the dynamics. Thanks again, and hope to see you all someday at the Oakville Chamber Orchestra concert. Bye!